Ayotte, Director of Consumer Services with the Brain Injury Association of America. And this is our second in the series on resiliency with members of our Brain Injury Advisory Council. So today we have Paul, Darcy, and Kellie, and we're going to be having a discussion about finding small steps, breaking things down into small steps, finding those small steps, finding the silver linings, looking for gratitude as part of the process of recovery. So I thought what I would start with is just give you guys a chance just to introduce yourselves very briefly, but kind of who you are, where you're from, how long you've been on the council, a little bit like that. We'll start with Darcy.
Hi, I am Darcy Keith. I am based out of Indianapolis or near Indianapolis, Indiana. My injury was 32 years ago. I have been on the council since 2021 and very excited that you're here today.
Excellent. And Kellie?
Hi guys, I'm Kellie Pokrifka. I'm from Virginia and I have been on the council, I think, since 2018 or 2019. And I had my brain injury about 10 years ago. So excited that you all are here. And yeah, please ask any questions. We love to help.
And Paul?
My name is Paul Bosworth, coming to you from South Louisiana, Cajun country. I had my brain injury 9/11/2007, changed my life completely, and grateful to be a part of this streaming and this team on the advisory council. And I can't wait to get rolling. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. I thank you all for coming and sharing your experiences today. So I think we'll start with, we'll reverse the order. We'll start with Paul and ask a little bit about, tell us a little bit about that process of kind of finding small steps. How does that happen? How do you go about it? What are some things you can share about your experience?
Thanks for letting me go first. So with me, it was trying treatments, trying doctors, trying more doctors, and it kept blowing up in my face. And I'd lived for 2 years just moping and like, I don't understand what needs to be done. And somebody asked me, have you ever written your story? And with my story, I found out that all these people were doing all these things but me. I didn't have a hand in this. I didn't have, and by the way, I didn't have any caregivers. I had 3 friends, Bob, Rachel, and Rita, that would check in with me and help me make decisions. And this was a big decision that I still carry to this day, which was figure out how I can do something for me and my brain, which was foreign language. I'd never done that before. Figure out something, just anything, and be thankful for it. And I've not stopped ever since. That was around 2013, 2014. And I haven't stopped since. And the brain loves positive. So give it more.
Give it more. Indeed. Kellie?
Yeah, so when I had my brain injury, I was in college, and I feel like a lot of us look back at that as, the most exciting time of our lives. We're living, like within a mile of all of our closest friends. We're excited. There's so many activities all the time. And then I was completely taken from all of that. I didn't have anything going on. I was back with my parents, and I'm so grateful. They're an incredible family. I always had that support. But like my social life, my career goals, everything felt completely decimated. I felt like, and I feel like so many of us felt that same way. Like we have to restart every part of our lives, our hobbies, our goals, just every single thing felt impossible. And then that's when I started realizing after a while, like I went through so much mental health stuff. It was devastating, crushing. And then I started trying to break it down a little bit more. So like I couldn't fix me completely. I couldn't get back to school, but I could do smaller steps. And that's what I had to do. And that's what I still continue to try to do. And luckily, as you go, you don't realize how much the small steps add up. but it's incredible and it's so exciting and it's so worth it. Just keep going.
Indeed.
Darcy?
And as for me, my story is a little similar to Kellie's. I was in college when my injury happened. Everything was taken from me, including memory of my major. I just completed it with an insurance company, and I lost memory of my whole college major. So I had to start back over in a whole new field of study. And that was particularly traumatizing to me because with a brain injury, I had to be able to understand what I was reading in the college text, be able to retain it, and then recall it on exam. So for me, I put in little incremental things that would allow me to be successful. Like I knew I couldn't focus like I used to. So I recorded the lectures with the permission of the professor. I sat in the front row to avoid any distractions that are in front of me. And then I had a study partner. So just the littlest things that we may not think of, and the study partner is the same thing as your support system. Your recording of the professor's lectures is just like recording down the notes of, notes or doctor's appointments. So that's the same thing now, but just taking those little bit of different techniques allowed me to be successful. And again, over a long period of time. Now, like Kellie, when she was talking about taking small steps, when I went back to college, trying to understand the text, the lectures, it took me a long time to do that, but I took it in little steps. I took it little chunks. So if I was more cognitive aware in the morning, I may read some chapters then or something. So little steps, and then when you celebrate those steps, hey, I can check off that I did this today. I can check off, make that visual board for you so you can check off and celebrate those victories.
Excellent. Kellie, can you give us an example as well? Some things that you tried that you felt that were helpful, or some things you were like, oh, that's not a good idea?
So many things that were just not a good idea. So many things I was previously able to do very safely definitely became completely unsafe. There were so many strategies, like Darcy was saying, just about how I would previously study. It was completely different. And then for one of the things that helped the most for me, just like in general, was I stopped going to new doctors and getting all of my hopes up and being so excited and being like, hey, fix everything. Like I have a brain injury, get rid of it. I started breaking it down into more manageable things, like how I couldn't be in the car for more than like 2 minutes without vomiting. My motion sickness and vertigo were so horrible. So then I would start pinpointing that, and I would do research on that and ask doctors how to fix that specifically. So by making it more manageable, even the doctors or whichever practitioners I was going to, they could fine tune the goals. And then I would actually make progress in that versus trying, like the whole buffet and just getting so overwhelmed and going nowhere and just being so defeated over and over. So that I think was my biggest help, was make everything tiny and then it'll add up. It's
so easy to fall into that, I call it a trap of like chasing the cure, right? Like chasing find the one silver bullet that'll just make this all go away. Like the one thing, right? If I talk to the right person, gives me the right, and I mean I would see how that can easily happen. So it's the importance of kind of trying to focus on that one smaller thing that is important to you, right? This, in your case, that motion, I mean, that's, if you can't have in a car for more than a couple minutes, you're pretty limited on what you can do. You're like, all right, if I could just get that a little bit better, if I can start to be able to manage being able to take a 10-minute car ride, well, now I expand my ability to go, tenfold. So those small things can make a big difference in the recovery process. All right, Polly. Tell me about some strategies or some things, some tips that you use. Like, what were some things you did to help break it down into steps? What are some things you did break down into steps that were feeling overwhelming before?
So my personality is pretty big, and I would throw that around. Me actually holding my breath is my words are actually an anomaly. But I realized that I was joking about these things hilariously that were not broken and ignoring the stuff that was broken. And since I used to manufacture computers for a major manufacturer, I thought, well, okay, that's a part. And that's another part. That's another part. And I don't remember, these were early days, so I don't remember who told me this, but I think it might have been Tony. He said, see if you can get just one finger hold on a deficit that you have. Just for a second, you realize that you closed the front door and locked it. Be joyous about that, because I used to leave my front door wide open. Still do sometimes, but it was the realization that I had, first of all, I had a hand in this. Second of all, that I have willpower to try. And a big, large semi-trailer truck full of grace and patience, because nobody else is going to do this but me. And I'm used to that because my parents are farmers, and that's how they think. It's like if you do something, get some feedback on it, get some people around you. If you can, most of us can't, and due to reasons. And that was really freeing for me was, hey, I closed my front door and locked it. Yay. Go on to the next day and see if you can do it again. It's that constant work. And what was I going to do? Sit there and wait? No, I'm not sitting and waiting. But through really guided and checking in with my friends and checking in with myself through meditation to realize, are you doing this? Is it helping? Is it helpful? And that way I could keep going. But I had to ask that almost 50 times a day because it was different things that were catching me. But try not to be complacent when a part of your brain's not broken and it's working fine. Try not to say those words, because there's another part that's going, hey, I need attention.
Well, I also think if you're breaking it down into smaller components, right, smaller chunks, and you feel like you can create some positive momentum, right? Like, oh, I made a little bit of progress on that. Oh, wait. So instead of feeling like you're spinning your wheels in the mud and not going anywhere, like, oh, wait, I made a little, it's not where I want to be, but I'm past where I was. So just that one little piece. And if you keep using that process over and over, you slowly kind of build that momentum, positive momentum, progress. And I think that builds on itself. I think it helps your mental health, where you're just like, all right, I know I have a long way to go, but I feel like I've figured out a thing that works for me. This idea of chunking stuff, breaking things down, right? Focusing on one thing can be a different.
And Greg,
yes,
when you try that, when we break it down into small steps, if you are successful at it, it's okay. Take a break, try it again later. It's just like a baby trying new foods. You know, you feed them peas, they don't like peas.
Yeah.
So you may reintroduce that, a week later. So just because you can't do something now doesn't mean that in the future you can't do it. So, keep trying, just give it a chance.
That's a really good point. That if you can't do it now, it doesn't mean 6 months from now you won't be able, be like, all right, that's where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work on some things. Let's see where we're at. So one of the other things that I think we wanted to talk about too was like finding these silver linings, right? This ideas of gratitude. So let's flip it and start with Darcy. No, I'm going to start with Kelly. Sorry, because let's go. Start with Kelly talking about kind of finding those silver linings, finding those moments of gratitude. Tell me a little bit about that experience and process for you.
So actually, when we were talking about this, mine and Darcy's is pretty similar. So we both ended up, I don't know if we, found it online or just like a tip just for general life and improving everyone's mental health, but we both ended up writing down 3 things every single day that we were grateful for. And the thing about that list was, looking back at it now, it is bleak. One of the best things that happened to me for a month was, I saw in my notebook, I got to watch 5 minutes of the Penn State game. And that was the highlight of my month. That is, and like I said, I had just come from college where there was fun everywhere. And that was my highlight. But it really helped, because once I started specifically jotting down 3 things, and even if it was like I had a good orange today, or I got to talk to my sister for a minute. Your brain starts rewiring and looking for all those positive things, and you realize that even though in those moments it felt like my life was completely valueless in comparison to what it was and what I thought it was, there was so much good in it, even on the days where I didn't leave bed for a single time. And you have to really, really work for it. And it sounds so cheesy and so corny, but those tiny things are everything. Those tiny things are all we have. And you realize that those tiny things are the big things.
Yeah. It is hard for, I think, for folks to wrap their heads around that idea of like trying to focus on those small things that made a positive difference in your day. So if you, again, you're just trying to change that mindset a little bit of trying to focus on what are some things that are, I don't even say not going wrong. Not to say going right, just not going. That's all.
Yeah. I vomited a couple less times than usual today. Like that's a huge win.
Small things that you think, all right, it's like tracking that progress in some way, shape, or form to say, all right, I'm going to work on recovery. I'm going to work on healing. I'm going to work on helping myself.
And the days you can't find those, you go back and read the other ones, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, even though this day is absolutely dreadful, look at all of these other days that I've had, all of these other wins.
So, Darcy, your experience was somewhat similar as well?
Yes. And just seeing that on paper. I mean, for me, what works is seeing it and writing it down. The more senses I can involve, the more I remember it. So we're talking about positive momentum forward, and just seeing those little victories is encouragement to move forward. Like I remember when I was an inpatient, I tried to jump rope. I made jump rope like once one day, and then the next day I could do like 5 or 6. And that momentum, that excitement, that encouragement then allowed me to be determined to do more, or to try to get another small step. So, and with the small steps, sometimes we are told no, or we can't do things. So let's say, we want to jump rope and we just can't jump rope right away. That's okay. Or let's say we can jump several different times. That's good too. But if the doctors are having you, or someone's encouraging you to do something that may be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and maybe ask you to stretch just a little bit, that's good as well. Like, for example, when I was in college, I wanted a handicap parking pass so that I could sit next to so I could park next to the building and just walk right in and not be fatigued from walking. And the doctors told me no. And I was like, no, why? And they said, because we want you to grow. We want you to park a little ways out so that you have to walk, and your endurance will develop better. And that worked. They knew we're exactly correct. So just because, we want to do things, and we maybe sometimes want to take the easy way out, there's a reason why we are there to persevere and determine, because it'll stretch us out and become more of what we want to be and live our best life.
I would think that the whole process of recovery is getting somebody out of their comfort zone the whole time. You're doing things differently than you ever did before. Nothing feels quite the same. Even when you get the same result, like I'm not doing it the same way I used to do it. That's unsettling to folks. It takes some getting used to. All right, Paul, I see your hand raised. I know you've got something to say, something to share around this.
I hope it's helpful, but it helped me to understand that it took 2 years for me to walk. It took another year for me to speak. So why am I standing there tapping my feet, tapping my toes, and impatient when after a week of trying, I'm going to give up? No, I'm going to keep going, because it takes the brain a longer time than we all want it to be. But as we can all in unison say, yes, it's worth it. It's just a matter of realizing where you are in your recovery process, as we've been trying to discuss here. And, oh, by the way, I lost a job, a career that I bet everything on. So I I'm right there with both of you, is to realize, yeah, everything changed. I gave up a lot, even my friends, because they were like, we don't understand. So you're three people, or you're another person, accountability partner, whatever you want to call it. That's helpful, because that realizes your space, your realization of, am I doing this? How am I doing? It's just a matter of walking through that slowly but surely.
So we had one of the folks had posted a question that I think I want to ask you guys. One of the questions is, how do you fight that feeling of isolation during all this? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or comments around that. That is a very, very common issue that we get when listening to folks who call us through our helpline or contact through the website. That feeling of isolation, that you're in this by yourself, that very often, I think you guys have touched on this, you don't know what the path forward is, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. You don't have your next 12 steps planned out. You're just, one at a time. And I feel like that can feel very isolating. You feel like each person feels like it's your own path. I don't know if folks have any thoughts or words of wisdom to share. I'll start with
we all do.
I know you all do. We'll ask Darcy.
Okay, so with my injury being 32 years ago, I did feel like I was isolated. I was in a rural community. There wasn't much information about brain injury. This is before like the massive use of the internet. The internet was out there, but it wasn't like the social platforms weren't there. So I felt very isolated. So I can understand how this person would feel. I had to rely on friends to help me with not feeling isolated. Now, that said, though, some friends do go away because they don't quite get brain injury, but it's that close person that you can talk to, and it may be in a Facebook group, someone that you can talk to in a safe environment, not someone that's going to take your words or use that against you. But feeling isolated, I would encourage you to find someone that is either close to you, or maybe in a Facebook group, because we are born to have community, and that's important to us before and after. So I found a community, whether that be with my church community, with a support group community, but that's what I would suggest, is to see if you can try to find a community in which you can feel less isolated.
I think Paul kind of spoke to this too, where he talked about he had his 3 friends. Mm-hmm. They didn't tell him what to do, but they were that, I get to talk about this out loud with somebody. That's just to process the information, just to process your thoughts about it. So right, any connection, whether it's friends that don't necessarily have to have the answers, an online group, whatever it might be, can help. I don't know, Kelly, I know you had some to share.
So one, I would say that the previous Resilient series covered how to find support with friendship. So I've definitely watched that. That was really helpful for me. And also one of the things I had listed actually on like making things into smaller steps was, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so isolated. I'm so alone. I used to have this social life. I used to have the support. I'm completely gone from all of that. And so I tried to make it into small steps where like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do all of those activities. Like I can't, join sports leagues anymore or, whatever, but I can research and ask around and find tips on how can I go back to a restaurant? What do I need to dampen the sound, the lights, the overstimulation, reading the menus, even just eating. Find something simple that maybe you can even, take on by yourself, but it's getting you back out into the community. So even if the person that you're talking to, is your waiter, it's another person, and just being able to talk and make human contact means so much. And I would say, I don't think there's a single one of us who has went through brain injury who has not felt isolated.
Mm.
So even though we all feel isolated, you're not alone, and you're not the only one experiencing this. We've all been there to such a deep, terrifying degree.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead. Go ahead, Paul. You can.
For me, it was realization of who's listening and who's not.
Yeah.
And because I was on my own, and I would tell someone what I was going through, and they'd look at me and say, "Oh, that's too bad," and then walk away or go on with their day. But it was the friends that I had that knew me before that, and I started with one, and then it became two, became three, only because that validation pumped my confidence up, which I had none, and little, if any. And I could barely drive. I could barely make my own dinner without leaving something on that was dangerous. But once I got validation from one person, that person, talk about small, that person's a whole person. It's an adult. And that propelled me, and I didn't even realize it, propelled me to take ownership of what I could take ownership of, as I mentioned before. And I'm seriously indebted to those people. And by the way, one was my girlfriend who I'd just met 6 months before, and she was struggling. God love her. She was struggling to try and understand what I was going through because you can't see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely challenging for the folks around you, right, to understand it. So are there any final thoughts, take-home messages, tips, tidbits, suggestions you would have for folks who are just starting to try to figure this part out? We'll start with Darcy.
I think one important underlying thread throughout this whole thing is gratitude and finding and being happy with that positive momentum, just being grateful. Hey, I can do this. Let's see what I can do next. And if you can't do anything next, or there's not a next step for you, it's okay. You can try it again, or just do a different route, find it something new to do. But just being grateful allows the positive momentum to move forward in your journey.
Excellent. Paul?
I learned that it takes more energy to be angry and upset and screaming at the night sky than it does to be grateful and take these little incremental steps, these little tiny things in your life. You could be in a wheelchair and change your attitude just by just literally making up your mind to change your mind. I know that sounds simple, but we don't say that enough. We have more chutzpah, we have more power behind ourselves than we give ourselves credit for. So to those survivors that are out there, first of all, you're not alone. Second of all, you're not alone in fighting to get your brain back. So I'm going to say to you, as I say to myself, keep going.
And Kellie?
All of these symptoms, all of this isolation, all of this pain and agony and starting your entire life seemingly over again is hard enough. And you are in such a desperate need of a cheerleader. And you have to figure out ways to be that for yourself, because all of this is too hard to go on hating yourself and resenting yourself and resenting your life. It's seemingly impossible to get out of that state when everything is against you. You need to be your own best friend, and it's so hard, but there's so many options for support. There's professional help, there's support groups, there's friends, there's so many options. Just please make the effort to get that support, because of all the symptoms, there's nothing worse than what's going on in your mind and just hating yourself. You deserve help, and there is help.
Well said.
Well said. Well said. I think that's a good place to end. Thank you all for coming, for sharing a little bit about your experiences and expertise today. For folks that are listening, you're always welcome to contact us if you're looking for information about resources, services, or supports. Check out the other videos that are on a YouTube channel, the previous resiliency. There's other videos that we've made kind of sharing some of the hard-fought lessons I think you guys have learned and wanted to share with others. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for sharing. Hope everybody has a safe and happy rest of the day and rest of the week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you.